so far this year, I mean, the biggest quantifiable number would be, that we've written as a community over 1 million letters to lawmakers. And that represents all different kinds of recreation types, whether they're in our coalition or not. And that's a really powerful metric in terms of, what our interests are.
If you don't show up, if you don't share what you think, you're not putting any weight in the scale. And their decisions are not going to be informed by what you have to say and what our community has to say. The opportunity to be part of that process, right? You're helping them do their job, right? And you're putting more facts on the table. And in many cases, you get outcomes that are like better because of our involvement.
Hello and welcome to the Duffel Shuffle. I'm Adrian Ballinger, and we're here to discuss the world of climbing and skiing in all its forms through the eyes of mountain guides.
And I'm Sam Kiekefer. In each episode, we'll unpack exhilarating stories, share invaluable insights, and get up close and personal with some of the most experienced and passionate guides and athletes in the industry.
Whether you're a seasoned alpinist or a weekend warrior, the Duffel Shuffle is your ticket to the thrilling world of climbing, skiing, and mountaineering. Join us.
All right, you're listening to episode 38 of the Duffel Shuffle podcast. Adrian, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm excited about our conversation that we're going to have today. Yeah, I got to go play in winter for a couple of weeks, was down in South America, skiing in Patagonia for a little more than a week, and then actually went surfing for a few days outside of Santiago and Pichilemu in Chile. And it was a phenomenal trip. We could spend the next couple hours talking about that. Terrible snow conditions, honestly, as we knew going into it, but really a fantastic trip. We talked a little bit about it while we were recording with Amy, and now I've been home for a few days, and it's, you always tell me, it's exactly what I hope, just the most perfect month of the year. I mean, I love every month in Tahoe, but this one, wow, it's just been awesome. The running's been amazing. The rock climbing is unreal. The lake is still good. We had a little monsoony, rainy period that was really actually pretty fun. And now it's just almost freezing at night, 70s during the day. I just want to be outside every minute of every day right now. So let's wrap this up so I can go outside.
Yeah, the reality is, though, my favorite part of September is the road construction is 10 out of 10. And so you should really stay away because it's just heinous road construction everywhere.
It is true. There's no such thing as perfect, right? You're right. During the main tourism season, they obviously do less of the road works and kind of big building projects and stuff like that. We might have some more cars on the road, but less of that. And now, it's just a reality. So, the way I see that, it's just still, e-bike is still the best way to get around North Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, if you became a mountain biker, you could actually ride from your house up through Mount Watson to Painted Rock and down to the office in Olympic Valley.
Wow.
Very much, spending time on single track dirt. But one day maybe we'll get you there.
One of these days. Yeah. Meanwhile, it's just a busy time. Em's movie is continuing to crank. And so she's got lots of, interviews, podcast recordings that are not our podcast, and loads of premieres, which have been really fun. Especially she did 3 shows here in Tahoe that were all sold out at the local Tahoe Odd House Theater in Tahoe City. And it was just so fun to see I've seen the film with a lot of different groups now, but to see it with all our extended Tahoe friend community was just so much fun. So that's been going great. And Everest or Alpenglow is
he can't even not think about Everest every month of the year.
We're actually already talking about spring 26 Everest, but it's just busy times at Alpenglow as we mostly start to wind down summer and prep for both winter and 2026 expeditions. So it's kind of an exciting time. We were busy this morning. We had a big meeting kind of voting what we usually try to add 1 to 2 new countries or trips each year to the Alpenglow expedition calendar. And we were all, debating what that's going to be. I mean, what could be a more fun conversation than what new place are we going to go explore?
I didn't get to vote though. What's wrong?
No vote for you, Kiekefer. I hope you submitted a trip through the expedition proposal program.
I didn't, but I do have a trip in mind. Well, and you had a movie premiere yourself over the past week.
Yeah. So also at Tahoe, we actually did a doubleheader with M's movie. Her showing of Girl Climber was sold out, and my showing of The Sound was not quite sold out. But yeah, so I.
It was the doubleheader. It's nothing personal. It's just
much.
people can't
4
sit
hours
through
of
two
movies. Yeah. No, The Sound is this pretty fun, like Hollywood horror film set on a big wall. And I was a climbing consultant on the project, and then ultimately did a cameo. They killed me off in the first scene of the movie. But a lot of friends were also involved. You know, Alex Honnold, Brett Harrington, Hazel Finlay were all in the film. Scott Bennett and Dave Alfrey, two really well-known, well-respected climbers, were, involved in both in front of the camera and behind the camera throughout. We just had so much fun on this random job in the middle of COVID. And so to finally see the film come out, I'm not going to say it's the best film that's ever been made, but like, if you're a climber, it's really fun and funny. If you're not a climber, the climbing's actually pretty rad in it. There's an opening montage of like Brett and Alex climbing that's like a sick, like 2-minute scene. It was incredibly well shot. So yeah, this is something for everyone. It's a lot of fun.
Just bringing climbing to the mainstream.
There you go.
Right on.
How about you? Are we still in the 2-kid pain cave? Are you biking a lot? Are you climbing a lot? Are you guiding a lot?
The personal outdoor recreation has been suffering a little bit, but I've been able to get out with my 2-year-old on a kids ride shotgun seat on my mountain bike. And we rode 3 times over his 3-day weekend.
Wow.
Which was awesome.
He's loving it.
And he's loving it. And we're doing 10-mile, 1,300 vertical foot, hour-long rides. Wow. With a couple snack breaks and a couple water breaks. And it's just fun. I mean, it's really cool to see like where things are going to go with outdoor recreation and having kids. And I think, that first little bit of time, it's like your outdoor recreation suffers. And then now I'm in the phase where like I'm seeing the light of what we're going to get to do together. And it's been really awesome. So having some fun with that. And
that is killer.
Starting
Have you
to think
crashed with him yet?
We haven't crashed. No, knock on wood. We're not going to crash. We're taking it easy.
The goal is 0 crashes.
This goal is 0 crashes. Okay. We're taking it slow, but he has fun. And, we do little rocks and drops and berms and things like that. Very small scale, but it just gets him excited. And also it's fun. He's really excited about riding his Strider bike because we're riding my mountain bike together. And so just like the joy of 2 wheels is clicking for him, which is cool to see. So that's my cool. That's my life in our parenting podcast that we talk about.
I love it. Yeah. I'm going to a baby bowling, party for parents that we say for kids, probably party tonight. Like it's all pretty fun just trying to expose them to different weird things and see what clicks. I mean, I really hope what clicks for my kid is not bowling, but you never know. Bowling's big in Reno. I recently found out Reno's
bowling's
like a hub.
Fun. Interesting. Yeah. And it's funny, like you talked about September being incredible, and it is truly this incredible month in Tahoe. And we've had these little glimpses into fall, which has really made me get excited for winter finally. I was enjoying summer, but I'm kind of in that moment where the rainy day put on the jacket made me excited for the rain to turn to snow, and starting to plan out winter. And it's exciting. The shift of seasons is always fun.
Yeah, I've been in the Alpenglow office the past couple of days, and I'm feeling it there as people have a little brain space now that the Via Ferrata isn't as busy and rock climbing and things like that. And so all of a sudden there's planning around, airy schedules and guide booking and, what events we're going to attend this winter. So I was hearing a lot about the different events and all the movie premieres are coming up for the big film, ski film companies. Yeah, I feel excited. I'm not in any rush, but I, just skied for a week and every day was so much dang fun, regardless of mediocre conditions. And so, yeah, that got me excited.
Right on. Well, talking about news this week, and maybe not all the way into ski season yet, I wanted to talk about Killian and his 14er project in the American West. We've got an awesome episode with the folks from the Outdoor Alliance today that we just recorded, and it will come out next week along with this news section. And it just kind of highlighted the significance and the value in, the public lands that we have access to. And it kind of ties in with Killian and his project. And, for those that aren't familiar, Killian Jornet is an incredible mountain athlete. And he was racing in the Western States 100 and just kind of, emphasized how amazing the Western US is and wanted to come back for a fall project. And so he announced his fall project is to supported but human powered climb all of the US 14ers. I think there's around 70 something total.
Contiguous US, right? No Alaska.
Contiguous, yes, correct. Yeah. Yes, lower 48. And so there's 58 in Colorado. I believe there's 14 in California and then Mount Rainier. And so not only is he going to climb all of them, but he's also going to travel between them human powered, so on a bike or running. And it's just rad. I mean, I think it's cool to see such an ambitious project. And then, I was like scrolling through Instagram and I saw some headline that he's done 33, which is almost half of all the 14ers. Now, he hasn't done the major sections of travel between Colorado and California, and then California all the way up to Washington. But he still is like just absolutely cranking. He's done 33 of 58 Colorado 14ers. I just looked it up. The speed record for doing multi-sport supported all of the Colorado 14ers is 19 days, 10 hours, and 40 minutes. And 19 days would be September 22nd, as Killian started on September 3rd. So we'll see. It's September 16th now. He's got 20 something left. And it's just fun to watch and hear and, read about this like truly just authentic objective that he's created. And he's just like so psyched on it. And it makes me psyched for just getting out into the mountains.
Yeah, it's a really fun one. I wonder how many people, like, I hope it breaks through to the mainstream, through the New York Times, John Branch, someone like that, because it is just this really compelling project that I think not only climbers can understand, runners can understand, bikers can understand, but the mainstream can understand. He's going to cover most of the American West, human powered, and putting all these summits together. It's just, remarkable, of course, right? Like in terms of like the persistence and grit that it takes. Like it's one of those cool projects that like no single part of it is difficult for any mountain athlete, but to do it all in as little time as possible, you're seeing stats. Of course, Killian's on Strava, so you can look at stats and see like the 36-hour push, or he did a 16-hour to a 4-hour nap to a 40-hour push. And it's like when you start to conceptualize how little he's sleeping, how much he's putting back to back, that just like we were talking about it this morning, like his engine is just so big.
I think you're right. His sleep stats are more impressive than his effort. Yeah. It's just like, he slept for 2 hours in a moving, or not in a moving RV because it's all human powered. He slept in an RV or on the rock or whatever, and then just is at it again. And it's like, how do you sleep 2 hours and then say, all right, I'm good to go now?
Yep. And I've had a couple of friends get out with him. He's joining people throughout this project, people from high-end running, high-end climbing, all these different worlds kind of joining him for small sections. And, it sounds like Killian's still like stoked for the conversation, to talk, to learn, to like he's still Killian even while in that depths of what must be a real pain cave. So yeah, just awesome to watch. It entails all the challenges of logistics and weather and obviously human performance. It'll be one of the, I think, great achievements in outdoor sport if successful. So yeah, great news item. Way more fun than mine. No, there's hope in mine, I think, which is important. But I think the news item that just purely took over everything else for me since we last spoke was the uprisings and political unrest in Nepal. I think it began around September 3rd or September 4th, Nepal. And the way it hit me first was from a business perspective. So on September 3rd or 4th, Nepal shut down all social media in the country. And that included not only Facebook and Instagram, but also the chat apps that we use like WhatsApp and WeChat. And so all of a sudden, communications with our logistics providers for expeditions that we have running currently and have coming up in a few weeks all went away. And when I first heard it, I didn't know the reason. Of course, I'm familiar. China has, its Great Firewall, and all those exact same apps are blocked except for WeChat. So at first I thought that was the story. And then very quickly it became apparent that shutting down that media probably had a lot more to do with trying to shut down political discourse in the country. And as ineffective as these decisions can often be, what it did was trigger real, massive, and ultimately violent or protests that led to violence, and over 50 fatalities of protesters on the streets in Nepal. As mostly young people, they ended up being called the Gen Z protests. Mostly young people came out to protest the shutdown of these apps, but because that shut down discourse, it shut down the ability to meet and organize and to protest against the government. And really, unhappiness with the government has always been a part of Nepal as long as I've been traveling there since the 90s. And there's been massive uprisings and political upheaval in the past, including the killing of the royal family at one point, including Maoist revolution at another point. But Nepal is a democracy, despite being a really challenged one. And ultimately, protests were focused around the massive corruption in Nepal, which is something on a very tiny level I can speak to from personal experience in the mountaineering world. But obviously, it's not only in the mountaineering world, it's throughout government. Corruption, lack of opportunity, something like 26% of all money in Nepal now comes from workers who have left Nepal and send remittances back because there are so few opportunities in the country, while there is just massive wealth at the top and in the political realm. So these protests happened, and it quickly became clear that they were going to take over the country. And over a few days, they did. Lives were lost. But ultimately, it led to the prime minister and lots of other government officials resigning. So that's the kind of the hard part, the facts on the ground. The good news is that the interim prime minister that was chosen is someone who the protesters really wanted. Her name is Sushila Karki. She was a former head of the Supreme Court. She was a justice and is known for her anti-corruption fights over decades. And so while she's only interim and will probably call new democratic elections next spring, the country almost immediately quieted down and joined together to do things like clean up the destruction on the streets from the protests. So we have a moment of calm now. We have a moment of hope. I think in no way does that mean to me that Nepal's path is clear or set or positive, but it's a reminder to me as we're living it here that politics and working together and being peaceful is incredibly difficult in countries around the world. A huge part of what we, I think, both experience for good and struggle with when we travel to these places to go climbing is the challenges of things we have so little understanding of, but the actual mechanics of a country working or not working. And we kind of dip in and dip out and hopefully have a positive effect through our values as well as our money that we bring to these countries that are often developing and struggling. Nepal continues to write its story, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to play there, bring business there, and hopefully they continue. Personally, I hope they continue to lean into democratic values. I just talked for a long time, Sam. Thought?
No, I think it was a remarkable recovery, or I don't know if you call it a full recovery, but kind of turn of events. It seemed like it was pretty dire for a bit there, and it had turned around quite quickly. I think, it's really interesting in how it impacts us, and that, political challenges are very much a part of our world in mountaineering and climbing and travel. And, whether it's Ecuador or Russia or Nepal or China or really any place that we travel, there's the potential for this to impact us. And I think it's a little bit part of the game. And, fortunately, Nepal was able to make a turn there that it could have gone two directions, and I think it went the right direction. But it's just a good reminder that all countries have their challenges, and that's part of the world.
Yeah, and hopefully we can just keep both interacting with those challenges and also learning from them. Obviously Nepal is a young democracy and it's trying to find its way, and probably for many of those years it's looked up to the United States, and I think maybe that's a bit more challenging today, but we are still functioning. We are still here. The system is still holding. I think that's important. But I think it does kind of like make me think about our politics as well in the conversations I have of how fragile governments can be. I think, to your point, this is something we deal with. Like, I think of the 16 countries that Alpenglow operates in right now, at some point in my 30-year career of guiding, at least half of those countries I've not been able to go to for years at a time and had to cancel expeditions to. Whether that's true with Peru because of the Sendero Luminoso, it's been true with Ecuador because of political coups, it's true in Russia today, it's been true in Papua New Guinea, it's been true in China, it's been true in Nepal. We stopped running during the Maoist time, we stopped running trips for 2 years and then found ways that we could run trips safely despite the instability for 3 of the years that were really difficult there. But governing is hard, and our political experiment is actually young in many ways. And I think for me, it's a good perspective because number one, it reminds me of the importance of putting energy into that and having conversations and thinking about the better ways to have political disagreements and the worst ways to have political disagreements. But it also reminds me this thing that's so important to me, going climbing and introducing more people to climbing and skiing outside. It's incredibly important. I know it has positive effects on society, and it is so unimportant in a country when a country is trying to figure out how to feed its citizens or how to have different voices heard or to choose, religious freedoms, these massive human issues that people have fought about for millions of years, and we're trying to go climbing. It's a positive, not a negative for me, but just keeping in perspective these things. And the last thing on that sort of front, I often hear, we run a lot of trips in China, and that creates a political challenge that some years means a trip can't happen. And I see and feel the frustrations of my members when that happens and professional climbers when that happens. And I think this gives perspective to me that if you choose to climb not on Mount Rainier or Denali, but you choose to climb in South America or Africa or Asia, one of the things you're choosing is to add the challenges of not only politics, but a part of the world that you don't understand. And that's what you're choosing. You should accept that as one of the challenges. And if that's what shuts down your summit instead of you get a gastro sickness, well, those two things are equal. They were all part of what made it so difficult and so meaningful if it does happen. And, Nepal is just a great example of that. For, right now it's still true, but a week ago it was really true, thinking about all our autumn expeditions and, whether now is the right time to run them and things like that. The good news is the answer is currently still yes, but that is part of the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, like you said, it looks like Manaslu and Everest expeditions are right on track. And, I think that's part of the beauty of travel is that you get to go immerse yourself in these cultures and not just read about them. And you get to meet people that are have an opinion and hear their opinion and hear their perspective rather than just reading a story about it. And I think you take the climbing out of it. It's just traveling it's an important thing to understand other people's cultures firsthand rather than through the news. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So more to come on that story.
Well,
I'm sure, but I said it wasn't a happy story, but loss of life is never happy, and a government falling apart is never, I think, the best path. But I do see a lot of hope in this, and in just that Nepali perspective of immediately putting aside differences and starting to work on this next step together. I'm quite hopeful.
Yeah. Well, coming up, we've got a bit about our politics, not straight politics, but we've got an awesome interview with Adam and Nicole from the Outdoor Alliance, sharing a little bit about the work that they're doing and the impacts that they're having here in the United States and in our political system. Welcome back. This is episode 38 of the Duffel Shuffle podcast, and we've got an awesome conversation today. We're here with the Outdoor Alliance team, or some folks from the Outdoor Alliance team, Nicole and Adam. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we first started chatting, honestly, it was probably like 6+ months ago. And it was around when we were talking about the Explore Act. And it was very difficult for us to all get on the same schedule, as it often is. And this podcast comes at a really crucial time. We have the Roadless Rule going to, it's a hot topic right now. And September 19th is the deadline for comment. And we're actually recording this on the 16th of September, which will be before the comment period ends, but the show will come out after the fact. So really important time. And since we started our conversation and now there've been a number of really hot topics that you guys are very involved in around politics. And so we're excited to have you guys on the show. I think for me, the Outdoor Alliance is a really significant coalition of advocacy groups. And I think that's the coolest part for me, because as climbers, as skiers, for me as a mountain biker, for me as someone that loves the ocean, you guys really encompass all of these human-powered sports that I love, as opposed to just one or two. And I think, working together is the most important part of advocacy and of making an impact in our politics. Unfortunately, as outdoor recreationalists, we don't make up the largest constituents in our United States of America. And so we need to work together to really make an impact. So we're excited to have you guys here. And before we get going, we do want to hear a little bit about yourselves and kind of paint the picture. So Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Outdoor Alliance.
Yeah, certainly. I think for me, it started in a parking lot, finishing up from kayaking. And that's why I'm here based in Washington, D.C., and I live here. I didn't move here for the kayaking, but that's what kept me here. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Cramer, you're a lawyer, right?" And because you're a kayaker, so you talk like you're still in the 8th grade, call everybody by their last name. And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm waiting to be like, this is like, how do I get out of this? Like, I be able to say I can't help your brother-in-law or whatever the problem is. and he's like, he actually worked for American Whitewater. And he needed help. They needed help renegotiating a hydropower permit on the Upper Youghiogheny River, which is in Western Maryland. It's Maryland's first wild scenic river. It's an exquisite place. I love this place. It's important to me and to my friends. And I said, "Yeah, I'll help." I mean, I didn't know anything about hydropower relicensing or negotiating with hydropower companies or anything like that. But it was so personally important to me. I just there was no other answer other than yeah. And it ended up being a fork in the road for me with my career. The problems that you solve in conservation were so much more important than the stuff I was wrestling with as a corporate lawyer. And that led to being on the board at American Whitewater, and a couple steps down, ended up being associated with Outdoor Alliance. First as I thought I was going to be their lawyer, but ended up being their executive director and CEO, and I've been in that role for 10 years.
Wow. 10 years. And has the organization really grown a lot during that time? Did it always represent all these different user groups, or has that been an evolution through time?
It's been an evolution for sure. In the beginning, there were 6 that all just worked together to see if this whole thing would even be viable. We did that for a few years, and then became a C3, actual organization in 2014. And then since then, we've built up, started with 5 organizations. One peeled off in the beginning when we decided to form a C3. And then since then, we've added another 4. So we're at 9 organizations now. And the most recent addition was Surfrider a number of years ago. So the original organizations were Access Fund, Winter Wildlands, International Mountain Bicycling Association, American Canoe Association, and American Whitewater. So those are the 5 OGs for Outdoor Alliance.
Fantastic. Do those organizations, do they own advocacy as well, and then you join for some things, or does all advocacy go through the Outdoor Alliance?
Oh, what a great question. So all these organizations have been doing incredible work advocating for conservation from the perspective of their different communities for decades, and they've been crushing it. So effective, so authentic, and accountable to climbers and skiers and boaters. And based on that effectiveness, based on their common vision, that's the premise of Outdoor Alliance. There's this realization that as fantastic and capable as they were, because of the commonalities, common values, if they work together, they could do even more. And that was the whole premise of Outdoor Alliance. And it started really as a question in the beginning, like we hoped we could work together. We thought we could do it, but nobody had ever done it before. And the early years were just kind of stress testing that idea, and quickly realized like we had so much in common in terms of values, in terms of approaches to things. And it just kind of built out from there. So they're amazing organizations in their own right. And they had the foresight to think that like we could do more together and approach attack different types of problems as a collective where it made sense. And they do their own things in certain areas where it makes sense, sometimes with some support from us or their peers. But it's kind of a fluid approach that has worked out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, before we dive in more, and also want to hear from you, Nicole. Adam, are you still whitewater kayaking brought you to DC? Are you still whitewater kayaking? Is it still a passion?
All the time. I mean, like, yeah, it's like it rings my bell. I've got the most wonderful collection of friends. I got class 5, 15 minutes from my house, and yeah, I love it. Yeah, kayaking and the complement for me is mountain biking, and there's some pretty amazing mountain biking in the Mid-Atlantic. So between those two, those are my two main jams.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, before we got online, I mentioned this, but so I went to college in DC and then stayed for a couple of years working for a climbing guide company called Earth Treks, Chris Warner's company that now also has climbing gyms. But so I spent a lot of time in the, I'm just going to be honest, relatively mediocre crags above the Potomac, like Colorado and Great Falls, and often looked out in the water and was like, are they having more fun? Those boaters look like they're having a lot of fun. So it's great to hear how good it really is.
For sure.
So Nicole, tell us how you fit into this equation and what your background is, and when you kind of joined Outdoor Alliance, what brought you there?
Yeah, that's funny. Adam always tells me that kayaking is like the best effort to like fun ratio, but I have not added it to my quiver.
Now that's a ratio. That's a fun one. We could do a whole podcast on that. Like, is it powder skiing? Is it whitewater kayaking? That's awesome.
Yeah. My name's Nicole. I live just outside of Eugene, Oregon, born and raised here. I'm primarily a mountain biker, backcountry skier, hiker, backpacker, and I actually started getting involved with Outdoor Alliance as an everyday recreationist during the first Trump administration, using their action alerts to defend public lands and protect public lands. And now I'm like the person behind the screen helping to write action alerts and helping, the greater outdoor recreation community this time around also do those same things, defending our outdoor spaces and protecting and funding our public lands.
Awesome. And what are the sports that you're most passionate about?
I mean, I like I said, I'm primarily a mountain biker and backcountry skier, but like, honestly, I just like love getting out on like my neighborhood trails, especially because I'm born and raised here. We have like such incredible access to outdoor recreation, whether it's like Forest Service land, dispersed camping. I'm 45 minutes from the coast, but just to be able to see so many more and different users like on like our neighborhood trails. And we actually have incredible bike paths here in Eugene that run all along our rivers. I really do mostly love to see people out recreating that recreate different than me.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing that really rings true with the Outdoor Alliance is you guys are all about just human-powered recreation. And it doesn't have to be any sport at the highest level. It's just people getting outside and moving their body however they prefer to do so. And that's, really what aligns all of your different advocacy groups within the coalition.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask. Sam mentioned like that it's all human-powered groups that are aligned. Is that a conscious choice? Is that a hard line? Do you ever consider bringing in kind of like rec users that might have engines?
Yeah. So we came up with the term human powered because in the beginning there was this, we talked about being non-motorized. And I just wanted to stab that term in the heart. I mean, let's just define ourselves in terms of who we are and what we do. And human powered is the best descriptor for what we do. That's the through line. So like in terms of being part of Outdoor Alliance, you have to be human powered and you have to be a membership organization, but there's no, we're not casting shade or have any contempt on motorized recreation at all. And we collaborate with motorized community on a ton of stuff. It's just a matter of like, there's efficiency that these different human power pursuits, there are through lines through them that enable collaboration at a very deep, very effective level. So that's why we work amongst ourselves and we're able to find common ground very, very well. And it puts us in a position to find common ground with other constituencies as well. So it's, you can't boil the ocean, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so how big is the Outdoor Alliance today? How do you sort of like quantify that? And how big is our community? Not necessarily that's only a member of the Outdoor Alliance, but how many people are you trying to speak for as you represent this?
Yeah. So, I mean, Nicole could help out with some particular metrics, but we're immediately accountable to the member organizations and their respective memberships and their respective communities. I mean, that's what enables us to have, find consensus based on our understanding of what the communities want, what their values are. So in the same way that AW is accountable to kayakers and Access Fund's accountable to climbers, that enables us, that accountability, enables us to pursue our mission. So it's like it starts with that, with the membership of those organizations, but then their broader communities in terms of their followings and supporters. So collectively, Nicole, where are our numbers these days? It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, we're not a member organization. Like, we hold all these different member organizations, which is what's so nice about our coalition. I often get asked, like, do you guys have a membership? And then, we get to like direct people to all of these amazing organizations within our coalition. But I mean, as a whole, we represent, the outdoor recreation community at large. And so that's, constituents who, want to protect public lands, who are involved in writing their lawmakers. And so far this year, I mean, the biggest quantifiable number would be, that we've written as a community over 1 million letters to lawmakers, and that represents all different kinds of recreation types, whether they're in our coalition or not. And that's a really powerful metric in terms of what our interests are as a greater outdoor recreation community and individuals, and that like protecting public lands, defending public lands is especially important to the outdoor recreation community.
Absolutely.
And if you add up the way the member organizations define their memberships and our email list, it's a bit north of 500,000 people that we're directly accountable to.
Yeah.
But to Nicole's point, representing the interests of the broader human power community, which is more than 500,000 people. But, yes, give you a sense of scale.
It's amazing. And so I want to go back to the 1 million letters. I'm sure we'll bounce around a little bit. So, of course, hopefully a lot of our listeners have been involved in reaching out to their representatives, writing letters, making phone calls, things like that. Like, can you explain why those don't just, that it's not a black box, or maybe it is a black box, but what happens? What is that impact? Why is that so important? A lot of the call outs we've been seeing recently are, take that minute, reach out. What does it do? 1 million letters, where do they go?
It gets public land sell-offs removed out of the budget reconciliation package. Yeah, we did, about 800,000 letters just through Outdoor Alliance alone, which is a metric that's representative of what other, organizations also did, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Trout Unlimited, a number of other organizations. And obviously, we ultimately got that very unpopular proposal out of budget reconciliation. And it just was this, really incredible moment of, the outdoor recreation community stepping up, seeing it through, and a real test of, the bipartisan nature in which we do our work and how we want to see, outdoor recreation interests represented with our members of Congress.
Yeah. And the black box, that's a common trope, right? Like, oh, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't matter. All these folks in Washington, D.C., scheming and planning. And so on the one hand, you got the black box idea. On the other, think about compassion. And what I mean by that is like all these lawmakers, they're directly accountable to the people who put them into office, to their constituents. All right. So if you live in the United States, you got a congressperson and 2 senators, right? And they're elected, they go to DC, and they have to solve all these problems, spending money and defense and any policy you could possibly imagine. And they're making all these decisions on behalf of, at a minimum, like 700,000 people. That's about the number of people in a congressional district.
Okay.
And there are about 435 congressional districts across the country. And then senators, 2 senators a state. Some states are really small. Some states are like mind-boggling big. But either way, they're making decisions on behalf of their constituents, and they're weighing all the different things. And that job is it's incredibly difficult and challenging, right? So they got to, you can't talk to all of them. You can't do a poll and say, hey, 700,000 people, what should I do?
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. So when they hear from constituents, it helps them evaluate decisions and informs their judgment. And they're not going to listen and do everything you want them to do, but it contributes to their understanding of what's at stake and how they're going to make decisions. And if you don't show up, if you don't share what you think, you're not putting any weight in the scale. And their decisions are not going to be informed by what you have to say and what our community has to say. And sometimes they'll get it right, maybe. And a lot of times they'll get it wrong. But the opportunity to be part of that process, right? You're helping them do their job, right? And you're putting more facts on the table. And in many cases, you get outcomes that are better because of our involvement. And like Nicole was saying, the public land sell-off idea, we had a handful of lawmakers who were like, hey, this is great. Let's do this. Right? Fine. That's your take. So you need to offset that with other lawmakers going sit down, son. I don't think so. That's not a good idea. And they have cover to do that and motivation to do that based on their individual values. But also, if they're hearing from their constituents saying, this is a terrible idea, it informs how they move forward on things.
Yep.
Right? It's who wants just to be a passive observer? That's not, our community is not passive observers. We see something, we want to I think I see a line here.
Yep.
Stick that line. I think that goes.
Absolutely. I love that perspective, and I like actually laying it out, because I think we all know it's important, but actually the way you describe it is that little bit of weight and that little bit of action, and that I choose to believe, or hope to believe, that the vast majority of lawmakers are listening. They might be listening to corporate forces, they might be listening to their party, but they're also listening to their constituents. That is who put them there. And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. The constituents, right? So if you try to write letters to lawmakers that don't represent you, they don't care. Don't bother people that they're not accountable. It's you could do it. It might feel good, but and that's why it's a way to kind of break it up. You don't have to change everybody's mind, but the people to whom are accountable, they're accountable to you, that works. And then as a collective, I write to people in Maryland because that's where I live. I'm a resident. And, Nicole will write to people in Oregon. And, by doing it together, that's how we could, as a community, inform national policy.
Right. You guys both mentioned the public land sell-off being in the Big Beautiful Bill earlier this summer. And I have to imagine that was one of your greater successes. I think that for all of us, we feel like it was one of our greater successes. And the public land sell-off was an interesting one in that it brought together, the Outdoor Alliance and the constituents that you represent, as well as OHVers and hunters and anglers and all these different user groups that aren't always aligned in their views. I would imagine that the OHVers are not necessarily fighting against the Roadless Rule. they are fighting against the roadless rule. I think you're a little bit, maybe I would imagine that there's not as much alignment there. How does that play into what you do? And how does it work to kind of be working alongside another group on one bill or one act, and then at the same time, maybe disagreeing on another? And how do you manage that?
Guys, these are great
I mean,
go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I've always kind of had the philosophy, and Adam can go back like way into the history and like, TRCP, which is kind of another model over on the hunting and angling side of like, what we do over here. And like, we do what we do really well. Right. And like, if someone else in our space is doing something really well, like we don't also need to go over there and like try to do it as well as them. So I think that's one of the nice things about this accomplishment of like, backcountry hunters and anglers and they got their community going, and like, we got our community going, and it is a shared success, and each of our messaging is a little bit different, but like the ultimate goal and the ultimate feeling that we all are in pursuit of on public lands and what it means to take action together it's the same.
Yeah. Concur. You have disagreements, but if you approach the whole thing with a level of curiosity and some compassion, you could find alignment. And when you find that alignment, you work on that issue. So we don't have the same view of like what's perfect, but we might have alignment in terms of what's good or what's valuable.
Yep.
And that goes an enormous way. Like, keeping public lands public, that as a baseline, there's a broad support for that. And we could agree to stand up for that belief. And then we could agree to have different perspectives on other things. But like with the one big beautiful bill, that was what was on the table.
Yep.
And just to clarify, you could ride motorcycles and dirt bikes and OHVs in roadless areas. And a lot of folks within the motorized community, my understanding, are going to be thrown down in favor of the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So
awesome.
That's one of it's a very generous type of protective designation, actually. We can get into it more later, but like, it's interesting to the alignment that you find if you look for it sometimes surprises you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a question I had for you. I think so often what we see on social media is just opposition. And there's not necessarily recognition of why someone is fighting for something that opposes what you're fighting for. And so often in our society, there's not really like a collaborative effort, it seems. It's just like, oh, you want this and I don't, so I'm going to say no. How much work are you guys doing with lawmakers to manage, what the needs are and what the goals are on your end and find some sort of a middle ground? I think I would imagine that your work is different than, all the social media that we see that just opposes certain things. But how does that kind of fit into what you guys do?
We anchor our efforts at being realistic. Like, what's on the table? Are we preventing something that we don't like from happening? We're trying to get something good that's going to happen, and like being realistic about like, is it even viable? Like, for example, Legacy Restoration Fund. It's part of the Great America Outdoors Act that was passed in the first Trump administration. It sent, a tremendous amount of money to deferred maintenance on public lands. It's bipartisan, signed into law by President Trump. It expired this year. There's a bipartisan effort to revive the bill, introduce it and extend it and get more money back to our public lands. The lawmakers that are elected, they want to do it. It's in our interest. We're going to help and try to make it happen. And there may be other things that we want to see happen that is not a critical mass of lawmakers that want to make it happen. So, I'm not going to invest a tremendous amount of time in those things. We'll keep them alive, move them along. But you got to like assess what's going on generally, what's possible, and like to capitalize on those opportunities and be realistic about it. And it's not theater. We want to get stuff done. And if Legacy Restoration Fund's on the table, we want to close on it, And we don't always set the agenda. Like, people that are elected, they get to say, this is what we're going to do. And then we get to weigh in we get to choose, like, what are we weighing in on? Of all the things that are going on, we have to sort through it and say, these things are the most important for our community. And then what are we going to do about it? They're important and we could do something about it because we don't want to waste people's time. And, back to earlier in the conversation, where do we put weight in a scale that's close to tipping?
Yep.
I don't want to throw weight in a scale that's not going to do anything.
Yep. Yeah, like any group, any organization, any individual, limited resources, right? And trying to figure out what's most important and also where you can make the greatest impact.
Yeah. Does it impact or catharsis? You're just going to feel good because you're angry? Okay, that's fine, but we're accountable to a community that wants results. So we got to exercise that judgment, and having a coalition, having a collective, getting all these different viewpoints, from climbers and skiers and boaters and mountain bikers, we could really finally calibrate what's going on and make judgments as to, what's going to be a good return on investment of our time and energy and resources. What's going to work? So we've had a pretty good track record on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about a few of those. I know right now the roadless rule rescission is really front of mind because it's happening, and then when this comes out, we'll actually know a bit more about what has happened. But can you give us a little bit of what have been some top priorities, let's say over the past year or so, and then what are you working on right now? And we'll maybe dive into a couple of them.
Wow, a few things. Right. So within the last year, Explore Act, that was huge. And that took over 10 years to get to go from concept into law. It's a long slog, but totally worth it.
Can you quickly describe to our listeners what it is and what it means, why it's important?
Oh, for sure. How it passed or how it started? What would you?
Oh gosh, I both. What do you want us to know about it?
Okay, I'll talk a bit about how it started. Nicole will kind of give you a top line of what ended up in it. But
all right,
we wanted to find, it was over 10 years ago, we wanted to find a way to protect landscapes in a robust way that was also welcoming for all the human-powered pursuits. And you can't ride a mountain bike in wilderness. You can't use a power drone in wilderness. And wilderness is fantastic. We're big supporters of it. But having, you've heard that phrase of, only thing you had is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We wanted to have other tools in the tool chest to protect landscapes in a more thoughtful, nuanced way. So how do you conserve and protect a place, but have it be more welcoming? And, we caught up with Senator Wyden back in the day. He was really interested in coming up with some new outdoor recreation policies, not just protecting places, but new ways to think about outdoor recreation and conservation. And we introduced this idea, this gap where there's not a way to systematically generate these proposals, from the agencies, given their congressional mandates. And if they were instructed to inventory landscapes for ecological and recreation value, that would be really cool. We'd kind of give a portfolio for Congress to take action. And that inspired the senator and others. And that was the beginning. And then so many other things in Congress, you have a good idea, and then another good idea, you put that together, and then another good idea, and it starts building momentum. So over the years, we kind of accumulated this portfolio of really impactful recreation policy ideas. The SOAR Act, right? Park Act, Bolt Act. Nicole could go into some particulars, but we went from, that was how we got started. And it was the first name before it was Explore Act, it was R&R, Recreation Not Red Tape. That was
that's pretty good too.
Yeah, but it had evolved, right? Yeah, it's a pretty good name.
But Explore is a bit more lofty, inspirational.
Yeah. But that was the start. But Nicole, tell us about how it all shook out in the end.
Yeah, this was a really cool experience for me because, this is kind of the beginning of me working at Outdoor Alliance, but also it was also called AORA in between the two, American Outdoor Recreation Act. Congress loves the acronyms, but it just was really neat because I knew SOAR Act from going back, 10 years ago. Senator Heinrich and my Senator Wyden helped write that, and Louis Geltman, who's our policy director, informed on that policy. And, the Bolt Act was, authored by IMBA, who's within our coalition, and the Park Act, Access Fund, American Alpine Mountaineers, also within our coalition. But there was a lot of other pieces of legislation in the package, stuff for youth, stuff for veterans, all these other interests that are not in our coalition. And it was like there was something for everybody. And, passing this at the end was really, like we say, like sending the line. Like the stuff that happened in the last couple weeks and even the last couple days to get this done was truly thrilling. And now we get to work and try to implement it. But again, like one of those, kind of standout moments of like what we can do when we come together and kind of, let all these different recreation types like have their thing within a package. And we've been really successful at passing legislation in these packages. And it'll be interesting to see, what else, we can do going forward.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Alpenglow Expeditions, a Tahoe-based guide company with an international reputation. In its 20th year of operations, Alpenglow leads the highest quality expeditions in some of the world's greatest mountain ranges, from California's High Sierra to the rugged Himalaya. Alpenglow runs more than 40 international expeditions per year, as well as offering a full menu of guided ski and climbing courses throughout California. Join us and experience the Alpenglow difference.
So tell us a little bit about like what's next with the Explore Act and how does that process work? Because I think for me, like I was really passionate about the SOAR Act. I think increasing access for guides is something that, and modernizing the system is something that really excites me. But at the same time, there was all this hype around it, and now I'm like, what's going to happen? And I don't really know.
Why aren't you allowed to guide on Denali next week? No.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, what does that process look like, and what is your involvement in that process?
It takes time, right? So Congress is at a certain elevation, and they're like, all right, do this. And the agencies got to implement it, the Forest Service and Department of Interior and Bureau of Land Management. And it's like there's a gap between the broad direction and then the implementation. So the agencies got to like figure out like, okay, what do we got to do about all this? How are we going to approach this? Do we need to come up with policies or regulations? What does it even mean? And they have to do it, but how quickly they do it, it requires like agencies to be fully staffed. And as you both realize, like this has been a pretty tumultuous beginning of a new administration in terms of agency workforce has been challenged. So whatever the policy priorities you might happen to have, if you don't have people to like read the law and come up with a plan and implement it, it's going to take even longer. They want to, measure twice, cut once. I mean, they're earnest, careful people, but if half the workforce, or quarter of the workforce in a certain area is gone or have been retired, it slows things down. And then the people that bear the cost of that, aside from the people that are losing their jobs, are like the public, who doesn't get the benefit of implementing this vision because there's nobody to do it. So it's thrown a bit of a curveball in terms of Explore implementation. That said, we've been in conversations with folks at BLM and especially with the Forest Service in terms of the people that are point and figuring out how to implement things, and progress is being made. And I'm hopeful, but it's going to take a minute.
And so is there like a standard timeline in an act like that? Or is it really just like as soon as it can get done based on the available workforce at a time? And also, what can something happen to it before it gets implemented? Like, could it get changed in a way that's not advantageous to us before it actually becomes implemented?
Oh, for sure. Congress could pass another law and say, that was stupid. We're not doing it anymore. I don't think that's going to happen given the bipartisan support. But one of the things, like in particular, the Forest Service, there's an effort to reorganize the agency. Like all of USDA, of which Forest Service is a part. Yeah. And they're looking to consolidate the regional offices. It's like a total shock to the system. So if they don't even have a clear sense of like the agency architecture and who's doing what, they got other fish to fry right now. They're not going to be, there's a limit to how quickly they can move forward on it. And that's like, it's within their discretion. They can move as quickly as they want to. And if they've got other priorities, they've got the discretion to say, no, we're going to reorganize. Explore Act's awesome. But first, we're going to reorganize the agency. Putting aside as to whether that's a good idea, that is within their discretion to do it. So these are, there's not a required timeline, but the forecast is difficult to share because things are highly unusual. This is, really strange.
And so, you guys emphasized how a package like the Explore Act really helped in getting it over the line. That was a major factor in creating this package. Does that also challenge the implementation because there's now this package of things to execute on and there's a prioritization that needs to be established and things like that? Is there a sweet spot in terms of like packaging some but not too much?
I would say that it's actually a strength. Like I said, our member orgs, participated in writing this legislation, and they'll be a big part of also implementing it. IMBA, for example, like we have a whole coalition of people trying to implement BOLT, which is the Biking on Long Distance Trails Act. And you have that over, with Access Fund and American Alpine, you have all these individual groups that are going to ultimately work with agencies to implement these things. And that's kind of goes back to that strength in numbers of like everybody had, weight in the scale on this thing. And like we represent, our memberships and the user groups. And so I actually think that that's, a huge strength in getting the policies within Explore implemented.
Yeah, Nicole's right. Because it's broken up into all these pieces. You could advance, we can make progress on certain aspects of it, not all of them. And which ones you advance, our community's got a say in it in terms of showing up, in terms of sharing what we think with our lawmakers and saying, hey, where are we on the BOLT Act? Where are we on the Park Act? Congressperson, it's really important to me. You check in on this, put more weight in the scale. And if you don't say anything about it, then the subtext is it doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, they're going to direct their attention to something else. Not because, that's just human nature.
Yeah.
So
we talk a lot on this podcast about obviously high altitude mountaineering, the perseverance, grit, things like that it takes. I don't think I thought about public policy advocacy having decade-long timeframes and basically being like climbing a very big mountain. How do you, stay positive? You probably don't stay positive all the time, but is it always looking at this ultimate goal? Can you see clear milestones along the way? How do you dive in? There's probably something on your plate right now that you're like, Congress isn't going to pass until 2036. And how does that feel? How do you go about it? Both of you,
Well, it helps to have wonderful colleagues, and to have a mission that you believe in and have a lot of support. It's you can't control the weather and the conditions, right? But you adapt and you be realistic about what's going on, what's possible, and you make some forward progress on it and be at peace with it. Because the alternative, it's not we didn't achieve perfection. I mean, that's a delusion. The alternative is just throwing your hands up and saying I got other things to do. I don't want to do this. Let other people make decisions. Mm-hmm. And it's gratifying to exercise that judgment, show up, and then see things be a little better or suck a little less because you were involved and you had some agency in the world. You made things a little different because you showed up, and you need those targets, those ambitious targets to motivate you. But the milestones are what really keeps us going, little mile markers. All right, that was cool. What are we going to do now? And it's better than just shrugging your shoulders.
Heck yeah.
And how much of your work is proactive, like the Explore Act was? You worked on it over 10 years versus more reactionary, like some of your more current work in the Big Beautiful Bill and the Roadless Rule being rescinded. Is there a split, and has that split changed in our current administration?
Way more defense these days, but we are proactive in thinking about the strategies and the approaches to doing the defensive work. Okay. Yeah. So that's where the creativity lies. How are we going to approach this? and coming up with like really thoughtful strategies to deal with these challenges. That's being proactive. You got to, pause and think and come up with a plan and like where are your resources, how you going to deploy them, how you going to sequence things. That's very, very intentional, actually super rewarding aspect of the work. And, the way I'm thinking about Roadless is that, the podcast is going to come out after the comment period, but this is just the first comment period. It's just the initial like, hey, we want to rescind the Roadless Rule. What do you think? Good idea, bad idea? And they're absorbing this information, and their intent is to rescind it, but they need to make that decision in the context of what public opinion it happens to be, what the comments are, and what lawmakers have to say about this as well. That's going to inform their judgment. And our hope is like, I'd like to introduce the possibility that hucking this whole thing out the window might not be the best approach. That maybe some modernization, some adjustments, some evolution. I mean, the thing's 25 years old.
Yeah,
it's really good, but nothing's perfect. And we're open to evolving and iterating this thing. And our hope is that other folks, other stakeholders share similar view. Like, because rescinding it all in all is a pretty drastic step. And, some of it's good, right? Like, I don't know. So that's like we're reacting, but those strategies are proactive. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
No, that
circles for you.
Yeah.
Well, that does. So let's talk about the Roadless Rule rescission suggestion a little bit, because we've been talking about it on and off. That's great to know. It's the comment period that closes on the 19th, so this podcast will come out after that. But then there's a lot more to happen after that, right? And so,
yes,
can you just give us the brief overview for our listeners? What it is? We know it's 25 years old. We know we like it. How much land does it protect? What is the other side? Why do people want to get rid of it? And
any ideas you have, like how would you? I want to hear how you would modernize it, because I think that's what's missing in our communication a lot of times.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot too hard.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. So 2001 Roadless Rule, it was an effort to acknowledge and inventory huge swaths of the forest system that didn't have roads. And usually there's a correlation between roads and development. And if you want to build something out, you need stuff, you need roads. So the roadless areas, these polygons, these places had a source of tremendous amount of clean water, ecological integrity, and next level recreation resources. And they're all protected, and you could ride mountain bikes, and you could climb, and you could paddle, you could do whatever you want. And they are all across the country, right? There's roadless areas back east in Appalachia, in not just in the West. I mean, my favorite mountain bike ride in the world, in the GW National Forest in Virginia, is in a roadless area.
All right.
So it's very generously distributed across the country. So they're very, the practical value of these places from an ecological standpoint, economic standpoint, recreation standpoint is like sky high. And it's worked out like over the last 25 years, like pretty well.
Yeah.
Right?
And most of us didn't even know it, right? Like I can look at my Gaia map or my Onyx map and put up a private public land and see it. I can see wilderness instantly. I don't feel like the public has that same sense with roadless. Is that right? And hopefully one thing that happens is we learn more about it and why we want to protect it through this process. I feel.
Let me give you a little reveal here. This is a little vulnerability. When I started with Outdoor Alliance, in the really early days, trying to find common issues that we all wanted to work on. And all the policy folks there were like, we got to protect roadless areas. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, who cares about roadless areas? If there are no roads, how can you get there? They looked at me like, you're such an idiot. Like, what is wrong with you? You don't know about roadless areas. Like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea. And you're right. There's not signage on roadless areas. And it's taken a lot of time and energy for us to kind of hold them up and say, like, this is where the goods are. Like all the places you love, like, oh, guess what? They're in a roadless area. So the rules worked out pretty well over the last 25 years. There are two efforts to make more bespoke roadless rules in Idaho and Colorado over the last 10 years or so. And they did a pretty good job. It's like a slightly different version of it. And, it's a big continent. It's a big country. There's a lot of variation. And folks in Colorado and Idaho wanted an adjustment. And those rules, we were involved in the adjustments into those 2 states, and they nailed it. It was good. It's not the same thing as the Roadless Rule, but it works. Gets us to the same basic goals. And this is an effort to just rescind the whole thing. And the motivations for it, I've heard that the administration is curious to really limit government authority over things that are statutorily required. And roadless areas, that's a regulation, and not to get too technical, but there's not anything in law passed by Congress that says you have to have roadless areas. And if you're thinking about smaller government and cutting things down, and there's not a statutory mandate for it, it's a target. That's what attracts some of the attention, as I understand it. That's part of the allure. And then also, from a policy standpoint, wildfire has gotten pretty intense. It's gotten worse. And there's a pretty big debate about like what's the best way to manage roadless areas in a way that like takes care of fire mitigation or fuels management. And these are legitimate questions to ask. But that's some of the policy considerations that I think are part of it. And then just the idea to have, I think there's a thought of like there'd be more local control if you didn't have a national regulation. And there's this belief that like locals know the landscapes, and you should lean into their best intentions and their judgment. And a big national rule might hinder that. I'm not saying that that's our position.
Right, of course.
Just kind of sketching out like what's at stake. And so as a big major regulation, the comment period that's going to end on Friday that's the first step. And then they're going to absorb all the comments. They're going to come up with a bunch of alternatives, and there'll be other opportunities to comment. They're going to weigh all these different things, and they've signaled what they want to do. And we have to be mindful of that.
So is the mountain of the next decade actually, is it to get Congress to actually make, laws around roadless instead of it sitting in this like administration level?
Great question. There have been legislative efforts to codify the Roadless Rule for a really, really long time. And it's more appealing to the Democrats than Republicans historically. So depending on the future composition of Congress, that might come into play again. It might be viable. But under this current composition of Congress, I don't think it's something they're going to be embracing and pursuing with vigor. But you're totally right. That could solve it for sure.
So to our listeners and to the people you're speaking to every single day, this comment period ends. There will be some sort of news, I assume, about what happens next. What are continued actions that people can take to have their voice be heard? Like, will there be another comment period, or what do you recommend?
So being current with what's going on and taking action when there's opportunity to do so. And Nicole and the team, they do an amazing job to like say, all right, now's the time to comment, and there will be future opportunities to comment. Well, once they'll absorb all these comments, and they're going to come up with a proposed rule, like a final rule. And then that's going to go out for public comment. Exactly when that's going to happen, maybe it's sometime into next year. It's going to be a minute, right? Because this has really sparked a lot of, public involvement. And then in the meantime, weighing in with your lawmakers, with your senators and your congresspeople, writing op-eds, showing up at town hall meetings, and also just getting a sense of like, does this personally impact me? And then sharing those experiences with the elected officials in a direct way would be great. It should be clear, this is the Forest Service making the decision, but they are mindful of what other policymakers have to say and have to think. And to that end, sharing what you think with local elected officials, county commissioners, that's also something for consideration as well. It's like, keep the momentum up. If we show up and keep the momentum up, we increase the chance that the outcome is going to be better than if you don't show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would say too, like, the public land sell-off proposal and the rescission of the Roadless Rule, agency reorganization. Next week, we'll talk about another rule that's getting rescinded within the BLM called the Public Lands Rule. it's kind of an interesting time because I kind of like happened back to 2017 when I became like an advocate for the outdoors, and I became more educated about public lands because of all the defensive work that we're doing. And, if you would have asked, anybody about Roadless Rule a few weeks ago or a few months ago, like most people, even who recreate, like probably didn't know what a roadless area was.
Yep.
They're probably not going to, necessarily know about the public lands rule when we pick that work back up again. So, as taxing as defensive work is, it's a really interesting time for us to educate the outdoor recreation community about land designations and places that are important to them. And, that just, puts the fuel in the tank that we need for the community to be writing lawmakers and, joining us in defending and protecting these places.
Yeah. I think we're like policy guides.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're not going to climb the mountain for you, but we'll show you the line. We'll help make sure that you're safe. We'll pay attention to the conditions. So if you're interested in going on this mission, on helping out, we'll let you know what you need to do and make you feel confident that it's going to matter. We're not going to waste your time. And we're going to give you an opportunity to share your values and perspectives in a very meaningful way. And it's, it's an ongoing challenge. And right now it's roadless, but as Nicole was saying, the public lands rule, there's an effort to rescind that as well. The notice just came out. There's a 60-day comment period.
Yep.
Okay? So we're going to be, the public lands rule is an effort to come up with a new framework for how BLM balances all the considerations and to more fully incorporate conservation as one of their primary goals and recreation. And we think the last administration struck a really good balance. They incorporated recreation in a thoughtful way. And, moving forward, there'll be plenty of opportunity for our community to dip into this issue because it's just as important and have just as much impact on the places that we love. So there's more to do.
Yeah. As soon as I started hearing about roadless and realizing it was just Forest Service, my immediate thing was, well, what happens with BLM? So it's interesting to know that's on your radar and it's coming. And of course, there's people looking there and wanting to make changes, not for the better, in my opinion, at least. So, how do you, in a period like this, I think through this discussion, what I understand, you can look at huge wins that the Outdoor Alliance and these groups you support have had. And at the same time, you can clearly see the challenge of this moment. Do you both remain optimistic in American are public lands? I travel all over the world, right? That's one of the things I've been just incredibly fortunate to do. And our public lands and the protections of them and the incredible areas we get to recreate in or just know are protected, and conserved. It is so, so important to what makes the US for me. So tell us about your optimism. Yeah, I think that really is my question. It is obviously a difficult time, but you also see the positive effects of your work. How do you put those two things together and take that next step?
Yeah, the tension's real, right? And I agree with everything you said, that there's this tremendous intrinsic value for these places and social value for these places. And it's inspiring, but at the same time, things are so divisive these days on so many different fronts. That said, this is a space where you could find common ground across a broad spectrum of political beliefs. And the reconciliation, the shenanigans there was clarifying. You saw a critical mass of Republican lawmakers say, no, we're not selling public lands. I'm standing up for public lands. These are important. And that is inspiring, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not a big fan of the bill at all.
Yeah.
But to have that many lawmakers stand up for something like public lands, it was good that it happened, but it's also good for what it suggests. If they could come into an agreement about this, I think okay, what else could we agree on? There is some common, well, can we build on this? What does this mean? And then there's a public lands caucus. It's bipartisan. You got equal number of Republicans and Democrats. They all self-select. They're like, I want to be part of this thing. I'm like, okay, what do you want to work on? What do you want to do? What might be some legislative ideas that are compelling to both sides? So it kind of takes the edge off a little bit. It provides a little bit of hope because it's something that's important to all of us. Mm-hmm. And it's running contrary to the dominant vibe these days in politics.
Yeah.
That aspect provides a little bit of hope, for the broader system. Like, there are some things where we could agree on. It happens to be something that's super important to us.
Yep. I mean, I think we are very lucky. I feel this in that, when I play outside, recreate outside on public lands is often when I feel the most common ground with people who I vehemently disagree on some things with. And yet out there, I feel so much more able to both have some of those conversations and to appreciate the humanity of the people I'm with, regardless of those disagreements. And so, I think public lands are such an amazing place to be building from.
Yeah. And I would say, at a time like now, like we need places and we need to be in community like more than ever, so, having access to public lands and being able to step away from the computer and the news and all of the fodder is so incredibly important. And I find that, going out solo is great, but also, connecting with your local community at the trailhead and the skin track, that's incredibly empowering, and like that helps, that those experiences help me continue to do this work because I get to see and feel, my local community, and that's a reflection of, all local communities and individuals who, love outdoor spaces and like to get outside with each other.
Absolutely. And so with the Outdoor Alliance, we've talked about you don't have your own membership. What is the best way for our listeners to support the Outdoor Alliance? Is it to join the member group, the Best Aligns, or groups? What should people do?
Yeah, any of the member orgs, they're amazing organizations, membership organizations that, they ring your bell in line with your values. Yeah, I mean, you're helping make the world a better place by being a member. And we don't have a membership per se, but following us on social, being part of our email list, being part of the community to understand what's going on and how to take action, that's huge. And we also, we're a nonprofit, so we have a lot of very generous donors. So that's another way to help with the cause as well. But I guess the main thing is just like kind of hang out with the people that you like. There are all these people, all these organizations with their own perspectives on how to be engaged in public policy or change things. And they all have their different vibe, different priorities, and like sort through them and find the ones that speak most to you and like listen to what they have to say and show up when they got suggestions. And, it doesn't have to be all of them, but like they should give you some joy. Like, don't do it because you feel obligated. Like, do it because you want to, and if what we have to say was like resonating, like get our emails, follow us on Instagram,
yeah, absolutely.
There'll be stuff to do.
It's a great perspective. I mean, these communities are rad, right? Like when I think about some of the groups that are part of the Outdoor Alliance, is like their events are things I love to go to. The people I spend time with are people I cherish. Like that's an important part of the puzzle, right? Like it's a community as well as having these very important like needs.
Yeah, totally agree. Like follow your heart.
And get outside and explore our public lands. I think that's the message from this podcast is, enjoy the outdoors because they bring a lot of value to a lot of people in different ways. So, well, I hate to wrap this up, but we finish every podcast with a couple questions. So, Adam, I'm going to start with you. You're probably the first whitewater kayaker we've had on our podcast. And I would imagine that traveling with your kayak can be kind of a bear. Tell us a story from traveling with your kayak, and probably one that was a total nightmare. Think planes, trains, automobiles, or just capital cities and kayaks.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I paddled the Futa Lafu down in Chile in January with some friends. It was pretty great. And I had the good judgment not to try to bring a kayak down to the end of the world.
I struggled with my skis. They're a lot smaller than a kayak.
Yeah, but I'm a pretty rangy guy, and I kind of particular my paddles. I use a 203. So the guides that we were working, they had the boat that I normally paddle, but they didn't have paddles that were quite long enough, and it's a pretty intense river. So I'm like, I need everything stacked in my favor. So I brought my paddle in a ski bag and kept my fingers crossed, and it worked out. But there's on the last plane flight, I had to there were weight limits to what you could put on the airplane.
Yeah.
So I had to move some stuff around with my friends to stay within the weight limit. And but yeah, it all worked out. The paddle didn't break.
And you didn't overweigh the plane and send it down. So that's a good.
Yeah.
How big was the section of river you battled? How long was the battle?
Oh, how long was the river? I mean, you were there.
Were you out for a bunch of days?
Yeah, we sessioned on certain sections of this river based on what the water flow was, which is a little higher than normal. It's big water, super powerful, and it was intense and beautiful, and yeah, bucket list trip for sure.
I love it. It's funny. I just went to Chile this past month, and since it's almost the same time zone, I'm like, it must be close, and it is so far away. It truly is the other end of the earth. Nicole, the second question we always ask is, when you're getting ready to go on the next trip, whatever it might be, advocacy trip to DC or an adventure around the world, what is the first thing you're going to throw in your duffel bag, the thing you would never travel without?
Oh, I never travel without a headlamp.
I love it.
Even to DC.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
See, that's the best answer. That's the best answer, because most people would say that and it'd be like, no shit, you're going on a climbing trip. But for you, I like that. It's universal.
Yeah, I do have a disaster story, though, that is a really good one.
We'll take
not to go back to that, but during the monument review during Trump 1, I went to every national monument on the review list. And there's one deep in New Mexico called Gila Cliffs. And we were driving out of that place, and it was 2:00 in the afternoon. It was dark skies. It looked like the sun was about to go down, just crazy, not quite rain, but thunderstorm. And we're trying to get out of this place. And it's a farm road out of there, and just super intense wind. And I looked at my rear view mirror, and the lid of my roof box was in the air.
Oh,
just the lid or everything inside?
The lid, and then obviously everything in the roof box. And this was a 6-week trip. So backpacking equipment and climbing equipment and shoes and sleeping bag and blankets and jackets and just everything that you can imagine that you put in a roof box. It could be anything. And the whole thing broke. So I got some of the gear back.
So you turned around and just started driving, looking for stuff for miles.
Yeah. In the ditch alongside barbed wire fence in the middle of New Mexico. But the worst part is that, we had so much longer on this trip to go. And because of the handles that close the roof box broke. And so I had to have the entire lid of the roof box shoved through the middle of my tiny SUV for the next 10 days.
That is so epic. Then everyone's looking at you she clearly doesn't know how to use a roof box. That's meant to go on top.
I'm not the only person that this has ever happened to. And so it's so funny to me when I see people with roof boxes that they will have bungees around them or a ratchet strap. And I'm that person knows that you could potentially lose the roof to your roof box.
Oh, that's brutal.
So Thule or Yakima?
Brutal. I plead the fifth.
You don't have to answer that.
Awesome. Well, Adam and Nicole, thank you guys so much. We'll be definitely following along your efforts, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. You guys have been such incredible hosts. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well. These conversations, I wish they could all be in the skin track or hiking to a river or around a campfire with whiskey, but just getting to hear from you for an hour, it's super interesting, and appreciate so much your work. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Duffel Shuffle podcast. You can follow along on Instagram, where we post our favorite clips from each episode, as well as more about the world of climbing, skiing, and mountaineering. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Catch you next time, and until then, we hope you enjoy some time outside.